The most important thing is your well-being and your health and your recovery, and on behalf of all of us here.
Something in Simon Cowell's world shifted upon learning of his son's heartbreaking diagnosis, and not even his sharpest critics saw it coming. The man once known for his brutal honesty is now moving quieter, softer, different. He's saying goodbye, but to what? Or to whom? And why now? What could be so heartbreaking that it changed Simon forever and forced him to let go? To grasp the reason behind Simon's emotional goodbye, let's go back to how it all started. A star's life changed forever. Before the world knew something was wrong, Simon Cowell felt it. But back then, all he had was a gut feeling. He thought he'd seen every twist life could offer, but nothing prepared him for the day he held his son for the first time, and felt a fear he couldn't explain. Valentine's Day, 2014, Simon Cowell cradled his newborn son, completely unaware that everything he thought he knew was about to be turned inside out. Everything about that moment looked picture perfect. A luxury hospital room in New York, soft lighting, and Simon Cowell, the man whose glare could shatter dreams on live TV, staring in silence at a 6-pound baby wrapped in white. His name? Eric Philip Cowell, a tribute to Simon's late father, and maybe the first real sign that the music mogul was about to trade hard edges for soft lullabies. The frown, the sarcasm, the signature eye roll, they were nowhere to be found. What replaced them wasn't just emotion. It was something deeper, almost primal: pride, fear, and awe. This wasn't just another celebrity dad moment. For a man who once judged the world through studio glass and contract clauses, holding Eric felt like stepping outside the noise. And he liked it. There were no cameras, no critiques, just a man with his family and a new role, one hasn't held before. The king of pop culture cruelty was now wiping milk stains off designer shirts and Googling baby sleep schedules. In an interview years later, he'd admit, "I didn't know I could love like this." But love doesn't stop life from happening. As Eric grew, so did a strange unease. At first, Simon chalked it up to overthinking. Parenthood is messy. Every kid stumbles. Every parent worries. But everything changed when the patterns began. This time, not tantrums, not tears. It was quiet. Too quiet. By age 2, Eric wasn't saying much. He'd fixate on spinning objects, cover his ears at the sound of applause, or lose himself completely in flickering lights. And Simon, who made a career out of spotting the unusual, couldn't explain any of it, not even to himself. He stopped sleeping. He started researching. He watched other children and compared them. He waited for a moment that would settle his gut, but it never came. Instead, it tightened slowly and daily. Because in the middle of the plush toys and bedtime hugs, something invisible had moved in, and that something would keep growing until it was impossible to ignore. Tiny clues, big worries. By 2016, Eric's silence at age 2 wasn't just strange, it was starting to feel like a warning. Everything Simon once understood about parenting, about predictability, joy, even normal milestones, was quietly slipping through his fingers. One afternoon in their Malibu beach house, sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows, Simon found Eric kneeling on the carpet, cars lined up in a perfect row. Not racing them or crashing them, just lining, no sound, no laughter, just stillness. And in that stillness, Simon felt the weight of something he couldn't name. This was a man who could read a room in seconds, cut through nerves like a knife. But now, he couldn't read his own son. No babbling. No data, just the soft flutter of hands and the occasional dazed stare at spinning objects. The signs weren't loud, but they were there, and they were growing. Imagine an X Factor rap party that winter. The room was electric. Champagne popping, camera flashes going off like fireworks. But Eric suddenly clutched his ears, panic spreading across his face. Simon carried him up instantly, holding him tight and whispering calming words no one could hear over the music. But inside, Simon was wondering, how is it that other kids can dance, but Eric can't? Other toddlers clung to toys. Eric fixated on patterns. He only stayed mute, overwhelmed by the flashing lights. Simon told himself, he's just shy, but deep down, doubt was creeping in. Back at home, long after the world had gone quiet and Lauren had gone to bed, Simon sat in the glow of his phone screen. Search after search. He was on about why a toddler doesn't talk, or why they can be sensitive to sound. The word that kept showing up was autism. Each article he read felt like a mirror. He didn't panic out loud. He couldn't, but something inside him cracked. And from that moment, everything shifted. The man who used to run non-stop meetings until midnight began canceling evening calls. The phone went off at dinner. The workaholic in the sharp suit was now sitting on a nursery floor, learning how to speak Eric's silent language. He was worried about his son's future, because behind the polished smile, behind the TV lights and million-dollar contracts, Simon Cowell was scared. The signs were adding up fast, and he knew something was coming. And when it finally came, the diagnosis didn't just confirm his fears. It shattered the life he thought he'd built. Those tiny clues, Eric's silence, his intense focus, were piling up, and Simon couldn't shake the fear that something big was coming, something that'd change everything. But as he and Lauren chased answers, the world was starting to notice, and their private worry was about to face a spotlight he couldn't control. The world starts poking around. At first it was easy to explain away. Some kids just talk late, right? But as Eric turned 3, the silence grew heavier. The laughter wasn't missing, but something else was. Eye contact, words, and connection. Simon watched, night after night, as his son drifted just slightly out of reach. And deep down, a quiet fear began to take root, one that no fame or fortune could silence. In 2017, the headlines weren't just about Simon Cowell's comeback, they were about his silence. Following Simon's public appearances with Eric, cameras fire like gunshots. Behind the tinted lenses, Simon's eyes are scanning every stare, every whisper. He's not just walking, he's guarding his son. Eric doesn't say much, he doesn't need to. At one of their usual outings in a memorable Britain's Got Talent taping, Eric hit the buzzer for an act on stage. The fans enjoyed every bit of that father-son bonding. But behind that bonding, some fans were watching and noticed some differences. Fans catch it, freeze frame it, and post it. Why's Simon's kid always doing that thing with his hands? Suddenly, the internet isn't just watching, it's digging. Simon, the same man who used to eat pop stars for breakfast on live TV, suddenly has nothing to say. No clapback, no smile. Instead, his son was now in the spotlight, being judged by the public's eye. Tabloids spin their own tales. Fatherhood softens Simon Cowell's new life at home. But the truth isn't in the headlines. It's on the nights Simon skips late X Factor meetings and races home by 5:30 p.m. Not because he's tired, but because something's off. Something's not clicking, and it's starting to eat at him. He doesn't say it out loud, not even to his team, but behind the scenes he's quietly lining up appointments with specialists and therapists, anyone who might give him a clue. Eric's speech is slow, sounds are too loud, and bright lights set him off. The signs are stacking up like puzzle pieces, but the picture still isn't clear. Meanwhile, online forums are exploding. Some comments are innocent, others cut deep. Words like odd and spoiled fly around, and Simon reads them all. His jaw tightens, but he never responds. He can't, at least not without saying too much. He channels the noise into action, supporting charities like Children's Hospices UK and Together for Short Lives. Publicly, he's the giving, reformed dad. Privately, he's pacing, searching, and second-guessing every little thing Eric does. Outings become calculated risks. A simple day at the park? It's a performance. Every step, every smile, under surveillance. But he learns fast that people want drama. They want a headline. He just wants his son to be left alone. Still, Simon knows he's running out of time. The questions are getting louder. The answers? They're already in motion. And when they land, they won't just rattle his image, they'll split his world wide open. What exactly did the doctors tell Simon that left him frozen, unable to speak? If that question hit you the way it hit him, hit the like button to keep the story unfolding for others who need to hear it. The diagnosis that rocked his world. Simon broke hearts on live television, but nothing ever shattered him like what he heard in that room. Everything changed in that cold clinic. Simon sat unrelaxed because he was on the receiving end of a verdict, something he always gave to others. In that moment, he felt everything those contestants used to feel while they stood before him. But this time, he was waiting for a doctor's prognosis, his jaw tight, hands gripped like he was bracing for impact. Across from him, Eric was stacking plastic blocks with mechanical precision, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. It all started during a family vacation when Eric turned 4. Simon, alongside Lauren, his wife, has planned a perfect weekend out for just the family. But what he didn't know was that this moment of relaxation would be a turning point. It will usher in a series of events that will make it impossible to ignore the changes with Eric. With the new environment, new food, and new faces came a flurry of reaction from Eric that will overwhelm Simon and Lauren. During dinner on one of the nights on the resort's terrace, Eric became visibly distressed as the sound of music filled the air. In his usual manner, he covered his ear and shifted uncomfortably while sitting on the table. Simon, in his fatherly way, tried to reach out to him, but that was to no avail. They had to leave the dining area. That night, Simon and his wife concluded that they would seek professional help. This was in a bid to help them understand Eric better and know how to help him. It would only take months of careful supervision from a team of specialists to come up with an answer. An answer that rocked the world of the music mogul. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. One sentence, calm, clinical, hit like a gut punch. He shows signs of autism spectrum disorder. For a moment, Simon forgot how to breathe. The man known for dissecting talent with surgical confidence now sat frozen, as if time had cracked wide open. Autism? The word spun in his head. Loud noises, missed milestones, and social struggles. Everything he'd been quietly Googling at 2 a.m. was now staring him in the face. He looked at Lauren. Her eyes were wide, blinking back tears, but Simon couldn't move. His brain raced back to all the tiny signs, the hand flapping, the silent dinners, the way Eric would light up only when things were perfectly lined up. The doctor kept talking, speech therapy, occupational support, structured learning, but Simon could barely hear him over the thud of his own heartbeat. Simon had built an empire reading people, but now he couldn't even read his own child. The future he'd pictured, gone. In its place was uncertainty, fear, and an overwhelming love that made his chest feel like it could split. He managed a question, "So what now?" The doctor smiled gently, like someone delivering both a blow and a lifeline. His brain works differently, but with the right tools, he can thrive. Simon nodded, but he wasn't sure if he was buying it. He wasn't afraid of hard work, but this wasn't a season finale. There was no script to follow. And then, as Eric quietly hummed to himself, stacking blue on red on green, Simon felt something deeper stir. A memory. Buried. A flicker from his own past, odd behaviors, family stories, things never fully talked about. Could this run deeper than just Eric? That thought gripped him harder than the diagnosis itself, and from that moment on, silence wasn't just Eric's. It became Simon's too. What secret was Simon hiding? And why did it take him years to say it out loud? Hiding the pain behind a smile. Simon's sly grin on Britain's Got Talent hid a secret struggle, but what was he fighting? The cameras love him, slick suit, sharp smile, perfect timing. But in early 2018, that grin was armor. Behind the curtain of Britain's Got Talent, Simon Cowell wasn't the unshakable judge. He was a father, unraveling. The diagnosis came fast and hit even harder. Simon's biggest fear has just been confirmed, and this is causing every part of Simon's world to tilt. That £45 million London mansion? It stopped being a luxury pad and turned into a fortress of calm. Thick curtains, soft carpets, soundproof walls. It wasn't about status anymore. It was about silence, comfort, and control. Anything to help Eric breathe easier in a world that suddenly felt too loud. In no time, Simon threw himself into it. He wasn't just reading reports, he was living them. Speech therapy by day, sensory play zones by night. Even his famous late-night calls were cut short. By 5:30 p.m. sharp, the phone was off, and he was fully present, helping Eric navigate the smallest of victories, a new sound, a steady gaze, and a gentle touch. But behind those tiny wins was a storm. Simon didn't grieve his son. He grieved the moments he thought they'd have. Laughing in the stands at a football match, singing off-key in the car, talking, just talking, about anything at all. His voice cracked in a rare 2020 interview when he admitted that he was terrified about Eric's future. You could hear it, the helplessness. And yet, he poured himself into causes that once felt distant. The same guy who rallied stars to raise money for Haiti now poured those efforts into autism support, quietly donating, showing up, and making it count. It was only later that he clarified that he was afraid of his son's exposure to technology like the internet and cell phone. He further stressed that he was petrified about his son having access to anything that would worry him. Still, late at night, when the world was asleep, he'd sit alone in the hallway, staring at Eric's toy cars lined up in perfect rows. He is just being a father crushed under the weight of a future he couldn't predict, trying to make peace with the truth. He couldn't fix this with fame or fortune. And standing in that silence, all Simon could think about was the next decision, the ones no one prepares you for, the ones that could change everything. A father's heavy choices. He had faced global fame, brutal headlines, and career-ending decisions. But nothing had ever made Simon Cowell feel this helpless. At night, Simon would sit in the dark, replaying each moment, each red flag, trying to convince himself it was all just a phase. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. In no time, Simon was faced with decisions that didn't just shape a career, but his son's entire world. Soon, Simon stares at a folder thick with therapy reports, school options, medical notes, each one a fork in a road with no map. These aren't just parental decisions. They feel like landmines. One wrong step, and Eric's future could be derailed. Was it better to push him into a mainstream classroom or protect him with a specialized program? Should he lean into intensive speech therapy or focus on Eric's sensory needs first? The questions never stop, and neither does the fear. This is entirely different from judging talent on live TV. There's no applause here, no audience, just a handful of choices and pressure. His old world, press runs, red carpets, and last-minute TV deals were beginning to fade. Now, his calendar is filled with therapist meetings, behavioral plans, and early morning routines built around a little boy who sees the world differently. Simon's used to being in control, but now control feels like an illusion. In no time, close friends noticed the shift. They said he seemed unusually quiet lately, but Simon shrugs it off. He doesn't want sympathy, and he sure doesn't want pity. This isn't a PR moment, it's personal. The man who once raised millions for disaster victims and charities now finds himself overwhelmed by battles in his own living room. Every day brings new doubts. Will Eric be misunderstood? Will kids mock the way he lines up toys or avoids eye contact? Will teachers get frustrated instead of being patient? Simon watches his son sort toy cars in perfect rows and wonders if the world will see brilliance or label it as odd. This fight is relentless. Simon walks through hospitals and therapy centers with a brave face, but inside, he's unraveling. Fame doesn't buy clarity, and money can't ease the ache of wondering if you're doing enough or too much. The only thing heavier than the decisions is the heart that has to make them. And that same heart, already stretched thin, was about to face a new test under an old enemy, the public eye. The cameras weren't far behind, and this time they weren't pointed at a stage. Share this with a friend who needs to understand that even the strongest hearts carry battles no one sees. Facing the spotlight's glare. 2019 didn't wait for Simon Cowell to be ready. It shoved his private world into the center of a public storm. He's in his car, parked outside Britain's Got Talent studio, scrolling through his phone. And there it is. A flurry of tabloids and online discussions were on about the rumor that Eric might be autistic. Some tabloids even sample a blurry photo of Eric, hands clamped over his ears, face crumpled. The kind of image that spreads faster than the truth ever can. Simon stares at it, frozen. Not because of the headline, but because he knows what's coming next. The comments are already rolling in. Some are kind, most aren't. Strangers are dissecting Eric's behavior like it's a riddle to solve, throwing around terms they barely understand: autism, tantrums, and bad parenting. Soon it turned into a feeding frenzy, but this time it was fueled by ignorance. Since Eric's diagnosis, Simon had been careful, protective to a fault. He kept the diagnosis close and tried to give Eric a life untouched by flashing cameras and fan theories. But now, that silence is beginning to feel like a cage. He turns to Lauren. They are torn between confirming the rumors or finding a better plan that will quell them. Instead of a tell-all, he leans into public moments, like bringing Eric to America's Got Talent tapings, showing he's a happy kid, and his charity work, like supporting Together for Short Lives for kids with complex needs. He hints at Eric's unique spark, saying that his son's got his own way of seeing the world, but stops short of confirming anything. The response is wild. Parents send heartfelt letters, praising his quiet strength, while tabloids dig deeper, spinning every ear-covering moment into a headline. Simon's 2003 Children in Need stunt, getting sawn in half for laughs, taught him the public loves a show, but this feels like a circus he didn't sign up for. Every red carpet with Eric feels like walking a tightrope, cameras hunting for clues. Now, the narrative is running wild, but under the pressure, something unexpected is happening. Simon's fear is cracking open, and what's spilling out isn't retreat. It's resolve. He doesn't want sympathy. He wants change. He doesn't want to explain Eric to the world. He wants the world to celebrate him. And suddenly, the old life, the perfect TV image, the carefully built walls, it all feels small. The spotlight's harsh. But maybe, just maybe, it's lighting the way forward. And that shift, straight from fear into something braver, starts deep in the heart. And right there, Simon is about to make the most unexpected decision of his entire career. What could it be? Stay with us. We are about to spill the beans. The goodbye that broke hearts. By now you will be wondering what made Simon say an emotional goodbye. But wait a minute, did you think he was bidding farewell to his son? No, that's far from it. Oh, you thought he was leaving our plastic screen? No, definitely not that. He used to imagine soccer games, birthday parties packed with noisy kids, and father-son jokes tossed across the dinner table. But by now, those dreams had quietly vanished, replaced by something far more fragile and far more profound. He is bidding farewell to what could have been, back in 2020, when he learnt that his world had changed with the arrival of his son. Nothing prepared him for the slow, silent ache of watching other dads live the life he thought he'd have. He told Kelly Clarkson in 2021, "Eric changed everything. Not just his schedule, but his soul. Every moment is earned." A single sentence from Eric feels like a standing ovation. A smile at a stranger? It's fireworks. While other parents post selfies from school recitals, Simon's clinging to progress reports and therapy wins. And yet somehow, this boy is breaking him wide open. Eric speaks without speaking. Every look, every nudge, and every soft hum when he's at peace means the world to Simon. And Mr. X Factor is finally learning to listen without needing words. They draw together, sketching their own little universe of Wish-Fits characters, each one stranger and more wonderful than the last. This isn't just parenting, it's a translation, and it speaks of faith. Simon was saying goodbye to the dad he thought he'd be, the one that would show Eric all the cool stuff like riding a bike and have casual chats about school and friends. That dad was long gone, replaced by someone who's cooler, calculated, and gets that everyone's different, and that's okay. Simon was also saying goodbye to not really understanding autism initially and how some brains just work differently, like not knowing what to do when he saw kids having a tough time talking or dealing with loud noises. Now, he couldn't just sit back and watch stuff without thinking about how those kids needed help. And it wasn't just about understanding. He had to say goodbye to his easygoing life, like no more spur-of-the-moment road trips or anything. Everything had to be planned around Eric to keep him comfortable and happy. It was like saying goodbye to the simple times. The hardest part was letting go of the dreams he had for Eric, not because Eric couldn't do amazing things, but because the journey to those dreams would be rockier than he thought. Simon felt like he had to be this superhero dad, learning new ways to help Eric every day. His closest friends noticed the change. He got quieter, and he had this sadness in his eyes that he couldn't always put into words. It was like he was carrying this heavy bag of new responsibilities and emotions. But even with all that, he never gave up on Eric and made sure he had the best life possible. From sleepless nights to therapy wins, he's learned love trumps all, forging a bond with Eric deeper than words. Subscribe to hear more untold stories that remind us what true strength, sacrifice, and love really look like. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.